Have you ever looked into the mirror and realized you no longer recognize the man staring back? The one who once stayed up until 3 in the morning arguing philosophy with strangers. The one who once drove across America just to feel the wind of freedom. Now he's standing in a grocery store quietly rehearsing an apology in his head because he picked the wrong brand of yogurt. When did the lion become a beast of burden? Walk through any suburban neighborhood on a weekend and you'll witness the silent domestication on full display. Men who once commanded boardrooms now ask permission to crack open a beer. Rebels who once smashed through walls now lower their voices, asking if it's okay to take an extra hour of rest. They call it maturity. They call it love. But in truth, it's training. And here's the cold truth that will make your spine tighten. Modern marriage is not a partnership of equals. It is a hostile takeover disguised as a merger, one where the man gradually becomes the employee of the very family company he once believed he was co-founding. Let's cut the nice talk and face it directly. The modern institution of marriage is engineered like a machine designed to convert a man's strength into fuel for a system he doesn't control. In the beginning, it feels sweet promises of partnership, of sharing, of we'll build a future together. But behind the smiles lies a psychological architecture refined over centuries that shackles men with 2 invisible chains, money and guilt. Let's start with money. Joint bank accounts, shared mortgages. Our credit cards, family loans on the surface. It all sounds fair. But these structures transform a man into the economic engine of a dream that isn't always his. He grinds out 60 hours a week, but when the month ends, he doesn't really decide where the money flows or how it's spent. This is a form of New Age feudalism where men willingly pay taxes into a system and even take pride in calling it responsibility. Psychologists have a term for what happens next: learned helplessness. When your effort no longer connects to your decision-making power, eventually you stop resisting. You stop fighting. You accept the harness. Just like in Martin Seligman's famous experiment where dogs stopped trying to escape electric shocks after repeated failures, men adapt by finding meaning not in freedom, but in being useful. Useful to whom? That's the haunting question. But the trap goes deeper than finances. Society arms the system with a far sharper weapon: guilt. Every natural male desire gets reframed as selfish. Want to hang out with your friends? You're neglecting your family. Want to buy a new gadget? You're wasting money. Want some space for yourself? You're being cold. Slowly you lose the ability to tell the difference between healthy compromise and spiritual suicide. Therapists call this pathological selflessness a disease where men view protecting their own well-being as a sin. Here's the sinister brilliance: it doesn't happen all at once. It happens grain by grain. Each small surrender feels harmless. But years later, the dunes of sacrifice bury a man's identity entirely. By then, he isn't even aware he has been erased. He proudly recites slogans like, "A real man puts family first," or "That's just what growing up means." In reality, these are nothing more than hypnotic chants, comforting lies that make him complicit in his own imprisonment. And no, this doesn't mean women are consciously plotting against men. The mechanism doesn't need personal malice. It's a system, and systems don't need villains to keep winning. Netflix doesn't hate you, but its interface is still designed to keep you binging until dawn. Likewise, the marriage machine doesn't have to hate men, it just quietly rewires them into compliant providers. And once the man loses control of his money, his autonomy and his personal boundaries, the next move is inevitable: his social isolation. Because as long as he still has a tribe of men who remember who he was before the leash, the system hasn't won completely. Which leads us to the next stage, the quiet but devastating dismantling of male brotherhood. Do you remember what it felt like back then, when a 2-minute phone call was all it took to gather the tribe to sit in a garage or a dingy bar drinking cheap beer and laughing until your stomach hurt? That wasn't just fun. That was your tribe. Men don't truly exist alone. We exist in brotherhood in circles where we are reflected, challenged, and reminded of who we are. But modern marriage has a strategy, both sweet and merciless. It dismantles those bonds one thread at a time, never through force, never with open threats, but through seemingly caring questions. Don't you think you spend too much time with your friends, or wouldn't it be better if you stayed in with me this Friday? Sounds reasonable, doesn't it? Yet each concession kills a heartbeat of the tribe. Weekly poker becomes monthly poker. The running club becomes, "Can you fix this shelf instead?" Then silence. This is the scarcity mindset applied to love. The illusion that affection is a limited resource. If you give it to your friends, you must be stealing it from her. A lie packaged so elegantly that men swallow it whole. But love isn't subtraction. Male friendships aren't competition with marriage, they are its necessary counterpart. Once a man is separated from his tribe, he loses the mirror of his pre-marriage self. There is no one left to remind him that he once drove across states on a whim, that he once laughed like thunder, that he once dared without apology. Without brothers to mock his weakness and force him back to strength, his raw identity evaporates. He becomes the optimized version smoothed down for compatibility. And then comes the slowest, cruelest erosion, the steady drip of criticism. It isn't shouting. It isn't violence. It's the quiet voice, day after day. You should dress better. You need to eat healthier. You watch too much sports. You're not ambitious enough. One drop seems harmless. 1,000 drops carve canyons. The man begins to believe he is not enough. And once he believes that, he stops trusting his own compass. This is when his locus of control shifts outward. He no longer asks, "What do I want?" but instead whispers, "Will she approve?" This is the moment he thinks he is still a partner, but in truth, he has become an employee waiting for sign-off. And when a man grows accustomed to asking permission for the smallest things, the next phase is inevitable. Even his most basic freedoms are reframed as privileges that must be earned. Let me be blunt. Men in modern marriage don't lose freedom in some grand, dramatic battle. They lose it in 100 tiny negotiations until one day they realize they need permission just to visit their own parents. At first, it looks like consideration. "What do you think if I go fishing this weekend?" That sounds respectful. Soon, it shifts into consultation. "Is it okay if I go?" And eventually, it becomes supplication. "Please, can I go?" From a grown man, he has now regressed into a large child begging for recess. This is the peak of what psychologists call learned helplessness. Once the brain believes every decision requires external approval, it simply stops deciding. He is no longer a man. He is the psychological butler of his own household. But there is a sharper weapon still: sex. What should be the most primal fire, the space where man and woman meet as equals, becomes a system of reward and punishment. Perform well. You're loved. Fail to meet expectations. You're put on hold. He isn't loved as a human being. He is rewarded like a performing dog. This is conditional love in its rawest form. It teaches men a dangerous lesson: you are only worthy of intimacy if you are useful, if you meet the household's key performance indicators. From a human being, he is reduced to a human doing a machine that exists only when it produces value. And here's the cruel irony: society cheers it on. Phrases like "happy wife, happy life" are treated as sacred wisdom. But read carefully, it's not advice, it's a curse. A hypnotic chant convincing men to surrender their identity just to keep peace at home. The tragic twist: the very woman who once fell in love with his confidence, his recklessness, his fire, now faces a hollowed-out version of that man, polite, agreeable, compliant. And what happens? She grows bored. She loses attraction. Because she never loved the neutered pet. She loved the lion. Here lies the brutal injustice: men sacrifice freedom to secure love, but that very sacrifice extinguishes the love itself. He gives up his essence to be a good husband, and that surrender makes him ordinary, forgettable in her eyes. The trap closes fully. He loses freedom. He loses his core identity. And in the end, he even loses the passion of the woman for whom he sacrificed it all. And if at this stage he still thinks, "I just need to try harder," then he has not yet understood the true nature of the game. Because the next stage is even more ruthless. Society will convince him that his personal ambitions, his dreams, his mountains to climb, are all nothing but selfishness, unless they are converted into family utility. You once had dreams, didn't you? A personal project, a book unwritten, a journey untraveled, a mountain unconquered. The kind of vision that made your eyes burn with fire, that kept you awake all night sketching maps of the future. But where are those dreams now, locked away, and the key sits in the hands of us? Because modern marriage has mastered a devastating move, it redefines success. It rewrites your entire measuring stick. That song you want to write worthless unless it makes money. That adventure you crave, irresponsible because the family needs stability. That bold business idea, dangerous because it might jeopardize the mortgage. Slowly you are trained to believe that every personal ambition is selfish unless it directly serves the household. So one by one your dreams are stamped waste of time. Men become maintenance workers in their own lives. Fixing the roof, mowing the lawn, clocking overtime hours to pay off the house. Busy, yes. Useful, yes. But inside you are suffocating. Psychologists call this achievement anhedonia, the inability to feel joy from personal success. You can still get the promotion, still bring home the raise, but instead of exhilaration, you feel only obligation. The thrill of a warrior conquering a peak is replaced by the exhaustion of a laborer finishing another shift. And here's the cruelest twist: that very surrender destroys the very thing women were attracted to in the first place. It wasn't the paycheck, the house, or the title. It was the fire, the raw, untamed energy of a man who dared to move through the world with reckless confidence. When that fire dies, you don't just lose yourself, you lose the primal magnetism that once made her eyes light up. The system doesn't stop there. It even rewrites your memories to soften the blow. Your freedom is reframed as immaturity. Your nights of laughter with friends are dismissed as childish. Your bold risks are recast as arrogance, and you repeat these lies until you believe them. As George Orwell wrote in 1984, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." Marriage in its modern form controls your present by rewriting your past so you forget you ever burned brighter. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. At 2 in the morning, lying awake in the dark with the bills paid and the house silent, a voice stirs from deep inside. Who were you? What did you want? Is this really all there is? And that's the most dangerous moment for the system, because if you dare to look directly at the mirror, you will see none of this was purely your fault, and it wasn't hers either. It is a social machine engineered to tame masculinity, to turn lions into beasts of burden. The perfect trap is this: men think they are alone in their frustration. But look around in offices, in coffee shops, in parking lots, you'll see the same deadened eyes everywhere. Men pretending to be fine, believing this is just how it is for everyone. A collective illusion that normalizes the cage. And so it passes from father to son. Boys watch their fathers living as maintenance workers instead of kings, and they learn to be a man is to sacrifice your dreams, to bow your head, to believe someone else's happiness matters more than your soul. And the cycle continues, generation after generation, like a factory line of extinguished fires. But here you are listening to these words. That alone means the fire isn't completely out, which leaves the real question: are you willing to pay the price to reclaim yourself? If at this very moment something inside you is shaking, that's not an accident. That's the echo of the man you used to be, the one buried under layers of duty, of responsibility, of empty slogans like happy wife, happy life. You can deny it. You can rationalize. You can say, all men go through this. But deep down, you know what's been lost. It's not just freedom. It's not just money. It's your raw self. The man who once walked with his head high, who spoke truths others were afraid to say, who lived like a fire instead of a dim energy-saving bulb. And here's the brutal reality. No one is coming to hand that back to you. No system will loosen its grip. No marital miracle will suddenly restore the lion. Only you and your decision can break the chain. Maybe you're scared of losing stability, scared of being judged, scared of standing alone. But remember this, you have stood alone before. Before the taming, you were strong enough to fight the world. That strength hasn't vanished, it's only been buried. The mirror is waiting. This time, don't look away. If you felt a sting in your chest while hearing this, that's proof you're not fully dead inside, which means there's still a chance for rebirth. And if you rise again, it's not only yourself you'll save, you'll become a living signal to other men, friends, brothers, even your sons, that the cage is not destiny. That freedom can be reclaimed. Don't keep this to yourself. If you've woken up, share this message with another man stumbling in the dark. Let him know he's not alone. Subscribe not as a fan, but as a brother in arms, because this fight for identity cannot be waged alone. And remember, recognizing the cage is the first step to opening the door.